Hello and welcome to Thursday Thoughts. Thursday Thoughts? What on earth are they, I hear you ask? Well, my friend Lucy and I meet every week over on Instagram to talk all things personal growth because she is as obsessed with it as I am. And we decided that we might as well put those conversations out as a weekly podcast. So now you can listen to us chat here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll be talking about topics such as spirituality, limiting beliefs, the ego, imposter syndrome, gratitude, meditation, confidence, and so much more. So if you're ready, here we go.
So we're talking about, rather randomly, but I suggested this because I sent my newsletter yesterday about nature, and because it's something that, Polly, you're gonna guess what's happening. Johnny's scratching on the cat flap. Bear with.
I will carry on.
Sorry.
So we're going to be talking about going outdoors in nature. I think carry on.
Yeah, sorry about that. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about nature because I know that you and I both spend quite a lot of time in nature. We're both very lucky. You obviously live, by the sea and by the South Downs, and I live in southwest London in an area that's very leafy and green by the river. So we're both very lucky in that respect. But I thought it would be a good thing to talk about because there are so many benefits of spending time in nature. In fact, I'm going to quote a study. So there was a study, there have been various studies done, but one in particular that was done with 20,000 people that was done by the University of Exeter that basically showed that people who spend 2 hours a week, which is less than 20 minutes a day, in green spaces, they're substantially more likely to report good health and psychological well-being than people who don't. And I just thought that was really fascinating. And also, spending time in nature can literally lower our blood pressure. It can reduce nervous system arousal. It can enhance our immune system function. It can even increase self-esteem and reduce anxiety and basically improve your mood. So there are so many benefits to spending time in nature. And one thing I will say, I think that even people who live, people thinking, well, I live in the middle of a city, but I mean, most cities, there is some green space that you can spend time in. And actually, I think that I have a particular affinity with nature because I always consider myself a country girl because I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Dorset. For anyone not in the UK, on the south coast of Dorset, of the UK, in a county called Dorset. And one of my sort of most vivid childhood memories is that my dad used to always drag us on walks every Sunday into the woods. We lived, as I say, in the middle of nowhere, and there was a lane up behind our house going up to the woods. And so we used to spend a lot of time in the woods. It's a real kind of memory of my childhood, spending time in the woods. And at the time, I would always be like moaning, like, oh, I don't want to go on a walk. But Dad would like make us go. And then it always used to end up being really fun. And so I have a lot of memories. So I think coming from the countryside and feeling very much like it's still a part of me, I've always, loved it. As I'm sure most people love being in nature in the country. But it's something that I do a lot of walking around this area. I do a lot of walking along the river every single day. And I've just realized that without that, I think it would really affect the way that I feel. I think it would affect my mental health, my physical health. So I just think it's something that's worth having a conversation about because it can, for me anyway, when I get out for a walk and I, walk by the river, or I'm in a park and there's green and there's trees and there's space, it just is so, so, so good for your mind. And you never will feel worse from getting out in nature. And it only has to be about 15-20 minutes a day, but it can make such a big difference to your life and how you feel. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to talk about, really. What about you? Because I know that you spend time in nature too, don't you, most days?
Yeah, pretty. I mean, most days and also having I mean, I must admit, having a dog is also so helpful because you don't really have a choice. You know,
Yeah,
even when on those days you think you've got too many things to do, and you still just got to get
yeah,
out into some sort of space. And you know, I'm very fortunate. Our dog really likes to be out, so it makes me get out every single day. But I suppose I've always enjoyed running, and that's been something which I like to do. And I'd rather be somewhere where I've got some nice things to look at than in a built-up city.
yeah,
And yeah, and I think, and you know, I am very, very, very fortunate that I've got the sea on one side, and then I've got lovely countryside on the other side of me. So that, you know, it's pretty easy. It is pretty easy. But as you say, you can get at most places there is some sort of green space. Another benefit, just to add to your list
yeah,
of huge benefits, is it really, really helps with sleep. So if you're struggling with sleep, it's super important to get out, particularly in the morning, because again, studies have shown that if you get direct, you know, it's about getting the sunlight in your eyes. It really helps kind of reset your circadian rhythm. And that is how our circadian rhythms are set, is through that morning sunlight. Because if you think we are natural creatures which have evolved through the natural world. So it makes total sense that we are going to feel better when we are in the natural world. If we're in a man-made, built-up concrete environment, it's just not going to be good for us because it's kind of alien to how we've evolved through time. So
yeah,
that I think is part of it. It's like we are very much part of nature,
yeah,
and our systems and our bodies need it to really thrive. Okay, we can survive in very much built up cities. You know, I'm a city girl. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the middle of Bristol, right in the middle. So I, you know, didn't have that sort of countryside around, but there were lots of parks, and we did have a dog, so we would go and walk the dog in parks and you know stuff. And you know, I've tried to get my kids out in the countryside as much as I possibly can, but they are typical kids. It's like, oh god, I
yeah,
can't be bothered to go for a walk, you know. And for them, it doesn't seem important. But then, you know, I think they appreciate it. You know, going to the beach. My daughter's literally in the sea, has been in the sea pretty much every day this whole summer. So you know, I just think it's so important for them. And I think, unfortunately, too many of us just are stuck indoors in front of a computer screen for too long, which we know makes us feel totally shit.
yeah, totally. It's funny you mention your kids because my sister, as you know, because weirdly you were at school with my sister, which we didn't even know when we first met.
No.
But Annie's got 4 kids, and she lives in central London. She lives literally around the corner from Hyde Park. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a massive park in the middle of London, and she has been making her kids go on walks since they were really, really young. And again, you know, she, like me, she sort of picked up that walking gene from our parents. And but she's always taking the kids out for walks. She literally forces them out. You know, she doesn't have to force them so much anymore. I mean, they're the triplets are 17 and my eldest nephew's 20, but it's something that she's been really, really religious about. And she's kind of made them do a really good walk around Hyde Park. And I think actually that you know, I think it's sort of really ingrained it in them that it's a good thing to do. And so I think that they will carry on doing it too. And Polly, the other thing I wanted to say, and this, I think this is a really big one, and considering the fact that you and I talk about, you know, all things personal growth and spirituality and all of that, one of the main things that I love about being in nature and just seeing the trees and the birds and the sky and the squirrels and the flowers and the, you know, whatever, is that it really, really, for me anyway, makes me feel really connected to something bigger. It just makes you it makes it undeniable when you're in nature, and if you really stop to think about it and you look, like, it sounds so silly, but if you look at a tree, like an amazing tree that's been there for, you know, decades, or you look at an amazing, like, sometimes, you know, I'll look at like a flower and I'll just think, holy shit, that, like, this incredibly beautiful flower. So when you see it, I know I'm sounding really like naff right now, but when you really stop and look at the kind of beauty of nature around us all the time, you know, a bird flying across the sky in itself is a freaking miracle. A bird flying across the sky. And, you know, it's for anyone who's sort of really cynical about anything beyond this 3D world, anyone who's like, oh, this woo stuff's a load of bullshit. Well, actually, all you have to do is to watch a bird fly across the sky to think, hold on a minute, there's got to be something more. It's not all about, you know, these sort of human egos and material things and cars and houses and clothes and about so much more. So I find being in nature really reminds me of that. It's so kind of healing because it does remind us that we are connected to this kind of one, you know, universal source energy, if you want to get really woo. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, God, you just have to look at a flower, even just like a wild flower, and you can just see the symmetry of that flower is just always really blows my mind how beautiful, even just like a buttercup is, you know, it's just so symmetrical and beautiful and wonderful, and how incredible that is. You know, you couldn't do that if you tried it, just, and they just kind of come up every year. And yeah, I mean, I agree. It really does highlight to you as well how insignificant really we really are. So if you're stuck in a real pattern of anxiety and worry and constantly thinking about yourself and stuck in that ego mentality, you just have to get outside and look around you to remember, my gosh, we are just little tiny specks in this whole universe, and it is so much bigger than we are. Not necessarily better, but bigger, and we are just part of that. And it's that awe, isn't it? That real kind of feeling of awe. It's like, this is amazing. And it does, you're so right, it really helps you feel very connected to that bigger universe, rather than be stuck in our own individual heads doing our own individual thing, thinking just about ourselves. It's amazing. It really is amazing. And I was about to say something else then. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember. But yeah. Oh well, never mind. I always do that.
But no, it's but what one thing I wanted to say actually is that I think it's important because it's very easy to never really think about this. Like, it's very easy to walk around the world and walk past it, you know, like even just walking past a flipping flower shop. It's very easy to walk past it and just not even notice and not even take notice. But I think it's a good idea to sort of make a decision to be a bit more intentional about really noticing, because we take so many of these things for granted most of the time. Most of us do. We don't walk past a tree and go, oh my God, just look at that tree. Look at that tree. It's freaking amazing. Or look at that duck floating along the water. You know what I mean? We just don't.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah,
so true. This morning I went for a run, and then I've been doing this recently when just unprepared, very spare at the moment, and the sea was just, I went by the sea and the sea was just so beautifully flat this morning. And I've done this a few times recently, and I literally just take my kit off and run into the sea and have a dip. And it is just, that feeling of space and that feeling of just sort of seeing out towards the horizon, and you're just this tiny little person in the sea. Just every time, it's just amazing. It really does make you feel that, whoa, is this just like that you are part of that whole of the bigger picture, you know.
One other thing actually is that getting out into nature on a regular basis, not only is it good for your mental and physical health, but also it reminds you that the seasons are happening. Because if you're living in a big city and you're not making time to sort of get to your local park or whatever, I mean, obviously it's much more obvious when you live in the country. But I remember a few years ago, I was driving back from Dorset, you know, a journey that I've done a gazillion times from London to Dorset. And this is a few years ago, and I was driving back, and I think it was like summer going into autumn, and autumn is my absolute favourite season. I'm completely obsessed with autumn. I just love it, love it, love it. Not least because it's just kind of, it's, to me, I find it the most beautiful season because the colours are just so incredible. I absolutely love autumn. And anyway, driving along, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, because obviously I live in London, and as I said earlier, I'm lucky that I live in an area where there is, there are lots of trees and there's lots of green spaces and everything, but you don't notice the season. I was driving through Dorset thinking, oh my God, just look at the change of seasons. So it sounds so ridiculous, but it's so true that in order to really appreciate changing seasons, you've got to get out into nature to really see it happening. And that in itself is a pretty amazing thing to do, because it's such a shame to miss that. And it is incredible. And that's one of the things I know people moan on about the weather in the UK, which to a point I get, but actually I really love the fact that we live somewhere that has seasons. I mean, I was in LA, as you know, in November, and I mean, I frickin' love LA. I mean, it's amazing. But I think that if I lived somewhere like that, if I lived somewhere in the desert, I would, not that LA's in the desert, but you know what I mean? If I lived somewhere in the world where there weren't seasons, I would miss that so much, because just watching the changing seasons is just, I think, the most incredible things. My God, I've gone off on a complete, wow, man.
It's getting back to that sort of connecting to the real world, isn't it? It's connecting with what is going on around you. Maybe we should just say, for those people who would like to get out more, some tips on how, what you can do just to kind of feel a little bit more connected with nature, how you can get out, particularly if you haven't got green spaces nearby. And also, just another thing, there's new research which has recently come out, which has stated that you only 4,000 steps per day dramatically increases your lifespan and your health span. So your lifespan is obviously how long you live, but your health span is probably more important, because you want to obviously live a healthy life. You don't want to live a long life and not have health. So it increases your health span quite significantly, and every 1,000 steps on top of that increases it even more. So getting out and just going for a walk, even if it's 5, 10, 15 minutes, I mean, it's going to dramatically increase your health span, and it's obviously going to get you out in nature, increase your mood. As we said, depression is really massively helped by getting outside as well. You get those boosts of serotonin through sunlight and daylight. And it helps with your sleep. And so, yes, getting out and just going for a walk, shutting your laptop and just making yourself go out and try and find some sort of green space. And we've talked about green spaces, but I think blue spaces as well. There's not so much research on that, but in terms of if you do live by the coast, or you live by a lake, or they are also, it's all the natural world, really. It's going to all be good for you.
Absolutely. And also, going back to sort of speaking about living in the UK and how the weather can be a bit shit sometimes, but actually there's nothing better than going out for a walk when it is freezing cold or when the weather's really rubbish, because it actually, I find that it almost has an even more positive effect on you, because when you come back, you feel so good for having kind of gone out in it. I mean, I got caught the other day I went for a big walk, as I always do, and I could literally see one side of the sky was, blue with just lovely fluffy clouds, and the other side was black, like this massive great black cloud. I was like, oh my God. And just as I was about 5 minutes from home, the heavens just opened, and there was just this torrential downpour. But even when that happens, when you get home, if you've been out for a good old walk, it just shakes things up. It just shakes up your energy. And, even if you do get drenched, or even if you do get freezing cold, actually, it also makes you appreciate your kind of creature comforts as well.
Yeah.
So,
it does. It so does. And also, apparently, just getting if you really are in a very, very urban area, just getting some plants in your home is great, because that kind of that's something green to look at. If you've got a balcony, get some green plants. So it's just about trying to be in the natural world as possible. And I am very much a city girl, really, and always have been. But I do now totally appreciate, you've got to get outdoors, you've got to get out in that countryside. It's so good for you.
Yeah. It always really shocks me when someone says something like, "Oh my God, I haven't been out all week." They've just been from home to work to home to work. And I think that it's worth mentioning that, I think people forget how amazing it is and how much it does improve how you feel. So if you're not someone who is used to getting out, or if you feel, and again, I think it's that thing of, it's so easy to be, when you get home from a long day at work, if you don't have time to do the walk in the morning, as you say, that is the best time to do it. And also, I put something about this on Instagram the other day, which is, so often the early morning is where you get the best weather of the day. How many times do I go out early morning? It's beautiful blue sky, completely still, like an amazing morning, and then the weather changes a bit later on in the morning. So I find that a lot of the time you do get the best of the weather first thing.
Yeah. But also lunchtime's is a really nice time to have a walk, to split up your day, if you are working in front of the screen all day. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I often go for a walk as well, around about 2:33, because I find that I get that dip, and if I'm often working at home, and if I'm going to get a really, really tired moment where I suddenly feel like, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely knackered, it's a really, really good way to wake yourself up, to go, like you say, go for a walk around lunchtime. But for me, it's that sort of mid-afternoon. The danger zone is between about 2:30 and about 4:30, so I'll often intentionally go for a walk then, just to kind of wake myself up. And it really does, doesn't it? It really just wakes you up.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of wide awake for the rest of the day. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I definitely get that mid-afternoon dip. I think it's just my age.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
Well, yeah, I think that, and also don't forget vitamin D is another good one. Why it's so important is, we don't make vitamin D in our body, so we need to get a certain amount of sunlight for vitamin D. So, and that helps with our immunity, it helps with our absorption of calcium. So many benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, I think that's probably everything we've got to say on kind of the beauty and the benefits of getting outside in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a pleasure as usual, and I'll see you at 9:45 for breathwork, baby.
See you then. See you then. Take care. Bye. Bye.